Hello, my name's Christina and welcome to my channel if you're new here, and welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to do a book review on this book, Christians Must Reunite, Now is the Time by Paul A. Nelson, and I'm also going to do a giveaway of 2 books that the author sent me, so it'll be a giveaway courtesy of the author, and I will share details at the end of the video just like I did on my last video. So thank you for joining me for this book review. If you haven't yet, please click subscribe down below and click the thumbs up button for the likes. That really helps and I appreciate it. And don't forget to leave a comment down below about your favorite part of this book review when you get done watching it. So this book is by Paul A. Nelson. It's called Christians Must Reunite, Now is the Time. And this book, it really doesn't take that long to read. I just had a lot going on this past week and a half, so it took me a little bit longer than I expected because of that. But it is a very good book. His manner of writing, you can hear his personality coming through, which I love. I love when I read a book to be able to hear the author's voice in the words that he's writing. And he did an excellent job of that, I do have to say. Now, this book kind of starts with the author and his background, and his background is actually very similar to my husband's background. So he starts the book out with a foreword, the main purpose of the book in the introduction. And then he talks about, in chapter 1, false teaching, and then chapter 2, his story coming home again to the Catholic Church. And he continues on with, it's up to us, the real story, the fullness of the faith, the Eucharist, apostolic succession, and he continues on and on in that sort of format. So when you start out reading this book, like I said, I read the foreword, I read the introduction, I read everything. And as I got into it, I realized how similar his story is to my husband. So he grew up with a mom that was Catholic and a father that was Protestant. And they kind of made this decision to not really raise their kids with any particular religion. So he didn't have like a real grounding in faith. And then one day he met the woman that would become his wife, and she was Catholic and so was her mom. And so he decided to make the progression into learning about the Catholic Church and being a Catholic. And he actually went to talk to his parents about this, and his father's like, what was he going to do? He had lost sort of the battle. All his kids were becoming Catholics, it seemed, and he was the only Protestant in the family at that point. And so he started going to the catechism classes, and his brother actually went with him. So it was a 2-for-1, if you will. Him and his brother were both doing the catechism classes to become Catholics. And he kind of goes into a little bit about how, catechesis back then just, it went in its reputation of not really being thorough, and the fact that we have so many people running around not really properly catechized. And, I can speak from experience growing up in Catholic schools myself, that, the catechesis was not fantastic. In fact, I learned more, I think, about my faith doing my own research and study as an adult than I did when I was in school. So anytime I'm on Facebook and someone says, oh, I know all about this because, I had this many years in Catholic school, and I'm like, yeah, so did I, and no, you didn't. So anyway, he talks about his journey into the Catholic Church via his wife. They get married. They're going to church. He got really into the whole being a businessman and the whole self-improvement thing. Self-help books were really popular for a time. I remember I even had a few. But the priest's homily kind of got boring, if you will. And his wife was going to a Bible study at a Baptist church. And so, he thought, okay, well, I'll go ahead and, give it a try. So he started going to the Bible study. And then his wife suggested, well, maybe going to one of the services, which was, I thought, kind of odd considering that she was Catholic, that she would suggest that. But so they started going to the Baptist services, and then the minister there said that they would need to get baptized, which he was kind of puzzled by because they'd already been baptized. And even St. Paul says, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. Just one. You don't get rebaptized. And so he kind of thought it odd. And then once when they were at a Bible study, at the end they had like, the prayers that everyone would do of, putting in their particular intercessions for things. And someone said to pray for the Catholics who think they're Christians, but they're not. And that really rocked him. So he went home full of this sort of self-doubt of, have we thought we were Christians all this time and we weren't? And it really bugged him. And he ended up getting up and praying and reading his Bible. And as he was reading his Bible, he got inspired that he needed to study the history of the church. And so he did. He started digging into the history of the church. And that's when he realized that not only are Catholics Christians, but we're the original Christians. And so he got deeper into his faith as a result of all this study, just like dove into it. And this book is in large part, I believe, a fruit of that study and that direction, that inspiration. And he covers so many topics in this. Like when I was reading before, the Eucharist, one church, apostolic succession, our Blessed Mother, and then the whole, they pray to the saints, they pray to statues, they pray for the dead. How are we saved? Bible alone. I mean, it just goes on and on. He covers the sacraments, the final four things, the road to heaven and hell, angels and demons, mercy and judgment. He covers modernism in here, what's acceptable, what's not. I have to say, other things that I noticed in this book, and I see it often actually, is where one spouse will start to draw the other one away from the faith. And so both people in the faith really have to have a good, strong grounding. Otherwise, that can easily happen. I think that was actually one of the important parts about when the prayer was prayed at the Bible study for Catholics to become Christians, even though they didn't realize that they weren't. And him thinking, whoa, wait a minute here. But I was very impressed with how he went to his Bible, began studying it, and prayed about it. And that's when God moved in him and spoke to him and said, study. And through study, they became solid in the faith again. Which, it actually reminds me of St. John Henry Newman when he said, to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. And so it sort of drew them back out of the Protestantism that they had wandered into. But it's a very, very good book about his story and his history and his progression in faith. So there's also a retreat that he has gone on, and there's a whole course that he did, a catechism course, I believe it was. And my husband's actually looking and getting involved in that too. And as an adult, it's really to take your faith even further. And then they meet up, I believe, once a year. And he talks about that in the book too. So that's definitely worth looking into if that's something that you're interested in. And he talks about it in the book and gives you some information on that. But it's really excellently done, well written, not dry at all. And you can kind of cruise through it, especially if you have a good bit of downtime. You could probably cruise through it in a Saturday with no issue. I, however, have, family to take care of and a household to take care of, and a little girl that likes to get into things and rosaries to make. So I don't exactly get to just sort of cruise through books. I usually have to set aside 20 minutes, an hour of time here and there each day during the week if I want to be able to get something read. But if you have a lot of downtime, you cruise through it easily in a day, I'd say. It's a really good, well-written book. I think it would be perfect for sort of the baby Christian Catholic that doesn't really know a lot about the faith. It's a good starting book, that's for certain. And in certain chapters, he does get heavier into stuff. So it's like interesting reading his defense of things and the way he explains it, because he's very concise. Most of the chapters are really short, which is kind of nice because it encourages you to keep reading, because you're like, oh wow, I'm already through this chapter, I'm already into the next one. Because there's a lot of chapters to the book, but the chapters aren't that long. So it's not like, oh, it's 29 chapters, how am I gonna get through this? No, you're gonna zip through it. And that's one of the beauties of it. So it would be really good for someone who's sort of trying to learn apologetics and how to explain things, because this book has those explanations and has those answers, and they're very concise, and they're short chapters, so it's not like, five pages to 10 pages of an answer to one question. He's very concise with it, so you're going to get the answer quickly. It would also be a good book for Protestants who are curious about the Catholic faith. Some Protestants out there think they know all about the Catholic faith, and whenever they talk about the Catholic faith, you can tell they don't know anything. They're just going off of rumors and misperceptions that have been projected about us. So this would be an excellent book for a Protestant who really wants to find out what is the Catholic Church actually about. It would also be good for a Catholic who, coming out of, being schooled in Catholic schools and not really knowing the intensity and the depth of our faith, it would be a good starter book for that. I really did enjoy reading it, and I found it extraordinary, the similarities in his story to that of my husband's. And it was really interesting because I keep stopping every once in a while, read a paragraph to my husband and go, doesn't this sound just like you? And a lot of his personality is very similar to my husband's. They're actually friends on Facebook and talk on the phone every once in a while, but it was just interesting to read a book written it's so similar in the core story to my husband's story, but then at the same time, he goes into really good apologetics. He also has another book that he's working on right now that I'm really looking forward to because it's going to be targeted even more towards Catholics from what I understand. Not that this isn't, because it is, and it's general apologetics. But the point of it is, like the title says, Christians must reunite, now is the time. And that is, I think, part of the focus of this book, obviously in the title, is reuniting Christians to the one true faith. And that's why it goes into such detail explaining what we believe and why we believe it and its foundations. He has lots of scriptural references in here. So he backs up our beliefs with the scripture. And he does a really good job of it. If you are interested in getting this book, it's available on 3 websites. One is his website, which is christiansmustreunite. I believe it's .com. If it's .org, I'm not sure. But I will have the websites listed in the description down below. There's also Reunite Press, and it's on Amazon. So there's 3 different sources where you can get this book if you're interested in getting it. Also, like I said, the author was kind enough to send me 2 paperback copies of this book. So I'll be doing a giveaway with these 2 copies, just like I did with the last book. So what to do in order to enter is like this video, make sure you're subscribed already. If you aren't subscribed yet, subscribe, then like the video, and then leave a comment down below about your favorite part of this book review. But yeah, it's interesting. He also has, ironically enough, sort of a surprise story at the end about someone who started out a Christian, not a Catholic, and found their way into the Catholic Church, and his part in their conversion process. And it's very interesting how he goes about that and talks about that and leads the individual in. But he has quotes in here from church fathers, from saints. He has actually quite a few good quotes from saints in here. And he also lays it out about the whole, there is a hell, there are people in it, and Jesus told us so. Kind of disputing the whole barren idea that hell's a state of mind, and that if there were a hell that was a state of mind, only like 2% of people go in there. He disputes all that and bases it in scripture, which is the facts, which I thought he did a really good job of. And so in general, I really like this book. If you're a Catholic and you have a friend that has questions and you can't really come up with exactly how to explain things, this would be a solid book to either get and read and use to explain to them, or get and give as a gift to them, because it's going to explain to them in just, real basic level what everything is. One example that he covers that's probably my favorite part of the faith overall is the Eucharist. And he begins that one with, Jesus began the formation of his church when the 12 apostles were gathered. The instruction he gave them over the next 3 years is passed on by the church until the end of the world. The most important teaching of Christ occurred about a year before the Last Supper. Although the apostles didn't entirely grasp what Jesus meant, they chose to trust him on the subject. What I'm referring to is the bread of life discourse in John 6:22 through 71. Before the crucifixion, they would all come to realize that what Jesus would give them, and all Christians, was the opportunity to actually eat his flesh and drink his blood. In this way, he would always be with us, even if we would not actually see him. Receiving the Eucharist is an act of total faith, and we believe as Catholics, necessary for salvation. For those non-Catholics who never receive this important teaching, but they love and have faith in Jesus Christ, we believe God will, through his mercy, reconcile with them in the end. It is important to note, however, if one has had this teaching and he or she chooses to reject it, all bets could be off. So, he's very straightforward, but then at the same time, he offers good explanations. So, I really like this book. I look forward to his next book, and I also highly recommend entering because I have 2 copies to give away. So, you can actually get a free copy out of this. So subscribe, like the video, comment about your favorite part of the book review was, and thank you for watching my videos, and I will see you in my next video.